for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion. There's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Now, Allison Chains I get. Don't get Drake. Okay. Do get Allison Chains. Yesterday, Sarah Sanders made the announcement, reading a prepared statement during her press briefing from the president as to the revocation of one former CIA director, John Brennan's security clearance.
As the head of the executive branch and commander-in-chief, I have a unique constitutional responsibility to protect the nation's classified information, including by controlling access to it. Today, in fulfilling that responsibility, I've decided to revoke the security clearance of John Brennan, former director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Historically, former heads of intelligence and law enforcement agencies have been allowed to retain access to classified information after their government service so that they can consult with their successors regarding matters about which they may have special insights and as a professional courtesy. Neither of these justifications supports Mr. Brennan's continued access to classified information. First, at this point in my administration, any benefits that senior officials might glean from consultations with Mr. Brennan are now outweighed by the risks posed by his erratic conduct and behavior. Second, that conduct and behavior has tested and far exceeded the limits of any professional courtesy that may have been due to him. Mr. Brennan has a history that calls into question his objectivity and credibility.
And if you were hearing what John Brennan was hearing, then you would conclude the same thing, that statement sounded like something that Idi Amin would give, that Robert Mugabe would give. Foreign despots and dictators, that's who do the kind of things that was done to him.
I've seen this type of behavior and actions on the part of foreign tyrants and despots and autocrats for many, many years during my CIA and national security career.
Yeah, this is an effort to intimidate and silence. And Michael Hayden, former NSA director.
Yeah, who might be next on the list, who they actually caught up with a baggage claim at Reagan International Airport.
I don't know if he's going to be able to handle it. He was almost brought to tears by Sarah Sanders' dramatic reading of President Trump's statement.
I mean, the way that Sarah Huckabee Sanders rolled this out was almost in a tone to be threatening to the rest of us.
Oh, my gosh, I could be next. Oh, golly. Ugh. Boy, not so stout a heart there, the heads of our intelligence agencies.
A little squirmish over there.
A little fragile, I would say. Wouldn't you?
Me?
Now, to be fair, as I try to be occasionally. Washington Examiner opines on this, conservative outlet, conservative editorials. Trump is wrong to suspend John Brennan's clearance. Allowing his understandable offense at Brennan's frequent and ferocious criticisms to drive his policy decisions, Trump has put his ego before the national interests, writes Tom Rogan at the Washington Examiner. He points out, for example, Brennan is fresh off his role as CIA director, and there may be ongoing missions for which even a detestable figure like Brennan could offer insight for the president and his national security foreign intelligence team. All right, we're going to have somebody adjudicate this, and I can't think of anybody better than Alberto Gonzales, who is a former United States Attorney General, of course, under President Bush, George W. Bush. Now he is Dean of Belmont University School of Law in Nashville. And he's also the author of the book True Faith and Allegiance, a story of service and sacrifice in war and peace. General Gonzales, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
All right. So, Judge Gonzales, how do you rule in this matter of John Brennan's revocation?
Well, there are all kinds of thoughts and considerations to weigh here. You know, the president does have the authority to do this, and quite frankly, also has the obligation to protect the nation's secrets. But I'm not sure that I can take at face value that what Sarah Huckabee Sanders wrote in terms of this was done for national security reasons. You look at the fact that the statement itself was dated July 26th. In fact, it was so vital to do this to protect our national security interests. You know, why was this created several weeks ago? and the other thing I would just say is that yeah, again, the president has the authority to do this, but in doing so, I think he's created a situation where he looks a little childish and I think a little vindictive, and has given ammunition to those who claim that he's just simply trying to muzzle critics. And no question, I think that John Brennan has been very extreme in his criticism of the president. I think at times it's got personal, and I can understand the president being upset, angry, irritated at some of Brennan's statements. But as president of the United States, you're going to be criticized all the time by experts and by kooks.
Yeah,
And I just think you have to be very careful about how you respond to that kind of criticism. Sometimes the criticism is warranted, sometimes not. But nonetheless, we're here talking about this, and there's just so many other important issues confronting our country. And I just worry about the reaction sometimes the president has with respect to criticism. And I think again, this may be another example where perhaps he overreacted, but there's no question that he had the authority to do this.
Well, I mean, we all know President Trump is not thick-skinned, and I always question the timing of things too. I mean, why now? It takes our focus off Omarosa, that scandal, and then the fact that his former campaign chairman his trial is coming to an end and the jury's beginning deliberations.
Well, that's certainly true. I don't know whether or not that it's simply a coincidence. I think you're right to question it because, as I said in the opening, the fact the statement was dated July 26th, you kind of have to wonder, well, if it was really so important and protection of our national security, why the delay? Why not? Why wasn't it done back in July, perhaps even earlier? But anyway, so I think that, as I said, unfortunately, this is another incident where the president has taken some actions, which I think unfortunately diverts the attention of the country and our leadership on issues that are really, really important for our national security and our domestic security and our. There's so many other things we should be focused on right now that I think that's regrettable.
Well, let me see if I can persuade you on this topic. So I thought how you're describing this is how I described the whole Omarosa flap, and I thought his engagement on that was without point or usefulness. This, however, to me is different. And I'm not just talking about Brennan. I am talking about Hayden and Clapper and Rice and Power. We have not gotten satisfactory information about, or much less a prosecution, about the improper, illegal unmasking of General Flynn. We don't really have a handle on the unmasking that was going on in the late stages of the Obama administration by senior intelligence officials and the basis for those unmaskings. We have seen that Brennan has claimed credit for launching the Russian collusion investigation by National Treasure, as he calls him, Bob Mueller, taking credit for a dossier that has been completely unverified, that he was out there promoting it. And that's after he has lied to Congress any number of times about both the drone strike program as well as spying, hacking into the computers of members of the Senate Intelligence Committee, after he supported the same enhanced interrogation techniques post 9/11 that were the basis of the vilification of Dick Cheney by the D.C. press corps. Obviously, we know Clapper lied to Congress and to the American people about the metadata program. We've seen the senior leadership of the FBI completely compromised and embarrassed and disgraced, including this week with the termination of Peter Strzok and their handling of both the Hillary Clinton email investigation and the Russian collusion investigation. And you have the distrust of these institutions, which are important, at an all-time low because of the behavior of the leadership of those institutions. So it seems to me that Trump shouldn't stop with Brennan. He should eliminate the security clearances for all of these guys and girls. And if they want to go talk on CNN and MSNBC, they're welcome to do that. I don't care what they have to say. This has nothing to do with free speech. But they don't have a constitutional right to security clearances or classified information to use for whatever dubious purposes they've used that information previously and recently. There's a whole cleanup of these agencies that needs to be done, and it starts with holding some of these names that are the most high profile as critics of the president accountable, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, you've given me a lot to respond to.
Yes, I have. You're right.
3-minute question.
Well, that was that was my closing argument. Now you get a closing argument.
Well, clearly there have been some serious lapses in judgment in the leadership of not only our intelligence agencies but also our law enforcement agencies. And I think that we have to remember that President Trump has been in office for over a year. He's had his people in for some period of time. And so, at some point, you've got to decide, okay, we've looked at what's happened in the past. There's been either appropriate accountability or maybe we don't believe there's been appropriate accountability. But nonetheless, at some point, we have to move forward. And I truly believe that, for example, this notion that Brennan led, his leadership, has led to the Mueller investigation. The FBI is going to make an independent assessment, and then the Department of Justice will make an independent assessment, irrespective of what the intelligence community says, about whether or not to conduct an investigation and to move forward with the prosecution. So, it's true that John Brennan might have brought forward some information to the Department of Justice, but at some point, it no longer is John Brennan's responsibility, or no longer can he claim credit for the Mueller investigation. It will be the senior people at the Department of Justice who decide there's enough here to do an investigation and there's enough here to move forward with the prosecution. I don't know what Bob Mueller knows. What I do know is that there appears to be uniform agreement that Russia interfered with our elections. And for that reason alone, and I think I've said this on this show, and I've said this repeatedly, for that reason alone, the Mueller investigation should be allowed to continue, irrespective of all the stuff that you rattled off. And I don't know if I agree with all of it, but I certainly agree with most of it. So I worry again. Republicans remained bitter, angry about what happened in the past. Democrats, are going crazy. They're in a frenzy about the possibility of collusion. And, I really worry about where we are today as a country. I, for one, have confidence in Bob Mueller. I know a lot of people don't. They question his integrity. They question his motives. And Bob was the FBI director when I was the Attorney General. I don't think Bob is going to be affected one iota by any criticism or anything that Donald Trump does. Not a whit. I don't think he's going to be affected by anything that Rudy Giuliani says. I just think he's got a mission, which is to find out what happened. And when he believes that he's done all that he can do, he's going to present those findings to the Deputy Attorney General. And then the Department of Justice, Rod Rosenstein, is going to make a decision as to whether or not this moves forward and how it moves forward. So, we just have to wait and see how it all plays out.
I have a quick question for you. Do you still have your security clearance?
No, I do not have my security clearance. And as a general matter, I wouldn't use it. I don't believe that I would need it. Again, because from the law enforcement side, we're not. I suppose we are in a way part of the intelligence community, but certainly not in the way that the NSA is, the CIA is. So, but no, I don't have my security clearance.
All right. Okay.
And I'm doing just fine.
All right, very good.
You're surviving.
And you've retained all your free speech rights as well, which is good.
Absolutely.
He is former United States Attorney General Alberto Gonzales, also counselor to the president, now the dean of Belmont University School of Law in Nashville, Tennessee. The book, True Faith and Allegiance, a story of service and sacrifice in war and peace. General Gonzales, always good to have you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And go Bruins. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM